Hello, everybody. Good morning. Well, good morning from my side. Today is October 5th. This is episode 19 of the Wi-Fi Wise Mind Chats. Today is a very special day. We have our friend and fellow ecologist, Gary Kennedy, with us from China, and he is here to talk to us today about spirituality. Gary is a well-being coach for staff and teachers at a school, a former chaplain, and an Anglican priest, whatever that means to anybody in Gary's words, which is a perfect segue for us today because today's episode is all about spirituality, belief, faith, all of those things. So my first question is, hello, Gary, and welcome to our podcast. So happy to have you here today. But my question is basic. What is spirituality in a nutshell? Can you please help me to understand what spirituality is? Because I truly believe that I don't know what it is, even though I have certain people point out to me, are you kidding me? Everything that you say and do, it is evidence of spirituality, but I can't seem to wrap my head around what it is, what it isn't. So welcome to our podcast. The show is yours.
I'm so glad you gave me a nice, gentle question to begin with. Because it's difficult to define, because spirituality is different for everybody. So I would say that spirituality is that which gives us meaning in life beyond the physical. So it's something that feeds us, that makes life meaningful, and that helps us to feel something beyond ourselves that's important. Now that sounds, even as I'm saying, it's kind of airy-fairy, but that's maybe as close as I can get, because I think for each individual person that whatever I've described will be different. Now, there will be some people who say that their spirituality is very clearly demarked with religion. And one of my gurus, one of my teachers and lecturers, says that outside of a religious base, talking about spirituality is meaningless. I'm not so sure that I agree with him, but what he means by that is that whatever the religion is that gives you a framework for understanding the other, whatever the other is. And so you have religious frameworks that give you stories. So every religion has its own stories about life. It's not about necessarily individuals, but it's about what life means and how we relate to that. So for me, my upbringing was within vaguely Christianity. I mean, my mum and dad were both what they would call Church of England. For those in America, you won't know what Church of England is, but Church of England is the church which the governor of which is the King of England. And it was founded when Henry VIII decided that he didn't want the Pope to be his boss anymore. And so whole scale, he took over the church. And so it was the Catholic Church in England, really. Nothing had changed other than the head. But they were only vaguely linked to. If you don't know what your religion is in England, you say, I'm C of E, Church of England. And it doesn't matter whether you go to church or not. And they were a bit like that, and that's how I was brought up. It was later on in life that I went through various crises and looked for some kind of meaning and some kind of foundation. to put my life into to make sense of what was going on for me. And that happened to fall into the Church of England. I fell into the Church of England purely by mistake, I guess, or by happenstance. And that started my journey into understanding how I understood life, and then starting to make sense of the stories that have been carried forth from Judaism and Christianity and into today's world. Having said all that, I've no idea now what the question was. Yes, I know what I was saying. I was talking about giving me space and I will just talk. So yes, so the religion gives a context for exploring something beyond ourselves. And I think this is what my tutor was trying to say. And if you don't have a context for exploring spirituality, then he feels that it's a bit wishy-washy. Nah, I wouldn't necessarily agree with him, but that's where he's coming from, and that's where lots of people come from when they link their spirituality to a particular religion, because each religion has its own stories, and then which I would argue are myths. I don't mean made up fairy stories, that's different, but a myth is a story that carries truth with it, even if it's not factual. Yeah, we can explore that later if you want to, but somehow you fit your own story into those greater stories. Like there's a meta narrative in which we place our own narratives in. I'm going to stop there because I'm talking a lot and leave some room for questions.
So I'm going to let my, fellow podcast friends here pipe in if there's something, questions, or speaking of their own view of what spirituality means for them. And then I will go because I'm sure I am an outlier here. So Alec just raised his hand. So go ahead, Alec.
I think Gary hit something really important there, and thank you. It was a great explanation. There's, I think, a real difficulty for people between separating the egoic actions of predominantly men, you reference Henry VIII, to the actual esoteric beliefs, which I think are the kind of myth, not fairy tale parts of teachings. I think if we go sufficiently far enough back in to any of these systems, whether they be the sort of Eastern, the earliest kind of Christian teachings, before we got politics and bureaucracy and organized religion, it feels to me like people have a much greater understanding and connection to what that spirituality meant for them. But as soon as we've got dogma and doctrine, that's when people find it really difficult to make sense of, well, what does it mean for me?
Yeah.
Interesting. And I don't know, is there much space in the world for people to actually do that exploration of what it means for them as individuals, right? Brett, Julian, either one of you have anything you'd like to say or questions? What does spirituality mean to either one of you?
Yeah, for me, spirituality is like, it's about the unknown, kind of, in a way, and how we link it in our everyday life. And I separate it with religion in a way that for me, like, religion is kind of the institution who frame it and organize it. And as Gary said, like, give you like a way of exploring it. So I think like that's a great use of it. And there is like every religion have his own way to do it. But also see like different culture without like organized religion, but having like a deep faith and deep spirituality. So I think like that's really interesting to explore and to also like see how we explore the unknown with like that's a lot of critical mindset, and that's really interesting also.
Right.
Yeah, religion for me,
Religion or spirituality?
spirituality, all of it. It's kind of all gets clumped into one big category because I believe in God, but I believe that there's a higher power. I don't know if it's like the one person kind of thing. So it's all, I feel like a very open view to it all because I can go from one church to another church and just exploring the feeling that's in each environment when you're there. So, and they're all, I'd say, based on a God, right? It's the religion itself is what the practice is under that God. So, yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm not nailed down to one spot or held into one place with that. Like I do feel spiritual and I believe in God, but I don't know. I can't explain it. It's a great topic to listen and explore more within myself and how I can connect with the different pieces here. So,
All right. So thank you, gentlemen. I'm just going to say this. So I grew up Catholic, okay, by two parents who were atheists. So I should have known right off the bat that I would have no idea what is happening in the world. I had two parents who were both brought up Catholic, and somewhere along the way, so whatever happened for them, they were both atheists, but they put me through all of the typical Catholic, training, the sacraments, all of that. And I mean, I went through all of it. I don't really have a clear memory of being so connected to it. It was just something that you were supposed to do, kind of mentality, right? Put your kids through. Then my father died when I was 24, and that just shook the foundation of everything that I thought I believed in and wiped it all away from me. So I lost my faith when that happens because I couldn't reconcile how what I just went through and witnessed for however long could happen. Like it just didn't make any sense, right? Fast forward 28 years now. It's been 28 years, and it's been a almost 3 decades long path for me trying to regain something, a faith in something, right? Because I lost it. And it wasn't until recently that starting to get more in tune with feeling like I want to believe in something. So here we are sitting in a podcast now with among some of the closest people to me, where I really need to want to get clear on this. Do I believe? Because I really don't know what I believe in. Aside from believing in myself, it's not, I don't know. However, there are some things that I do that are so counterintuitive to that screams you believe in something or you really just want to believe in something. So I have this desire to want to feel held by something bigger than me, to want to believe that there's a greater something that has my best interest. I don't know what it is, but I think it's connected to faith is connected to trust for me, and I don't know how to bridge that gap. So the more we talk about it, the more it gives me to sort of think about and try to find. But Alec, what you wanted to say something?
It's just something that I know about you from our friendship is that nature is very important to you. You feel connected to something. So there's this kind of Gnostic belief, this knowing that there is something bigger and greater. And if you look at any indigenous culture, their connection to where they live and how they live amongst that area is part of their spiritual belief and the belief systems. And it was only with the growth and control of particularly the Roman Catholic Church that spirits, trees, animals were removed. And, that element became missing. There's a great poem, and I forget the exact name of it. It's something like "My Cathedral is Nature" or something, and it recognizes all this stuff, that a waterfall can be as important as a cathedral to some people. And I think that's a little bit of where your Gnostic belief sits. You know that you can go and connect and feel held in nature. You go to this beautiful shrine that's out in nature, but there's a clash. It's paradoxical. You've been told through your nurturing that it's not about the outside world and that kind of thing. And yet that's where you feel most connected. I'm guessing Gary is going to be the most informed on how the spiritual part of nature and the elements was removed from organized religion.
It's really interesting because Gary and I met up in one of the Zoom rooms that we have, and I was wearing a cross, and he noticed it and commented and asked me about it, and that's what opened up this conversation where I actually laughed, and I'm like, I wear a cross. I don't know why I wear a cross because I don't know what I believe in, but there's something about the symbol of this cross meaning something that I've lost connection to somewhere along the way. And then I mentioned how there is a shrine out by where we live. It's an outdoor, beautiful, walking, acre and acre long, huge outdoor shrine to Catholic Church. Like there's a walking, Stations of the Cross, there's a cathedral, and I go there whenever I'm feeling like I have to clear my mind or be supported or maybe just cry, right? So I go there because it's quiet, it's outside, but I'm amongst like Catholic symbols of religion, and Saint Michael is my favorite saint. It's like I have a favorite saint, but I don't know what I believe in. Like, serious? Make it make sense, Gary. Like, please. I don't make sense. I have a favorite statue. I wear a cross. I want to believe. Like I truly, I think I long for the feeling of feeling held, right? There's something very comforting in knowing there's something bigger and better that is looking out for me. Because when you believe there's nothing, it's lonely and it's a struggle and it feels really sad and it's almost terrifying. Like I have to do this all by myself kind of feeling. So I put my own son through Catholic religion with the same mentality as my parents, right? Like, I don't know why I'm doing this, but we're supposed to. So just go learn whatever it is you're supposed to learn and then make your own decision when you choose to. So this is why we're having this podcast, because I literally beg, Gary, please, let's talk about this, because the more we talk, I think I'm waiting for some bigger, greater experience to happen, right? Like in my mind, somewhere along the way, spirituality got connected to having an experience of some type. Like it doesn't just come from within. So I don't know how to connect to that feeling of being connected with
And yet you
higher.
connect all the time, don't you? You connect with people constantly.
Yes. Is that spirituality? Like, does that mean I'm yeah,
well,
I guess I do.
What is that about connecting with people? What does that give you?
What does that give me? It's a sense of feeling that sense of community, or even just showing up for people makes me feel, it just makes me feel good. inside, like to show up for people? I don't know. Never had to answer that question. What does it give? What does it give me? I'm gonna have to think about that after this. It's interesting.
The reason why I asked it is because you said that you don't feel a sense of connection, and yet this is obviously something that's really important to you and something that you do naturally. So rather than just focus on you, Erika, I'm just going to take the heat off a little bit. Is lots of us get into this place where we want to be right. So our way of doing anything is the correct way of doing it. It's the correct way and the only way of doing it. It gives us that sense of certainty about something in life, because life is so uncertain. And so you get various groupings. I know about Christianity the most, so especially within Christianity, where there are so many different denominations, lots of them claiming that they are the right way within the Christian faith, and everybody else outside of that has got it wrong. So you mentioned that the Gnostics, who were termed heretics, but hey, that's again that thing, right? Who's right, who's wrong? But we have the Catholic Church for a long time who wouldn't acknowledge any other part of Christianity as being possibly having correct ways of doing things. We have the right wing in America. Sorry to point out the Americans, but there's a very strong right wing movement there who say, if you don't believe what we believe exactly, and even if you don't vote the way we believe, then you're not a proper believer. But what if these are all different ways of people connecting? So maybe for some people, it is really important for their spirituality to have very specific guidelines that they can live by. For other people, it's going out into nature and reaching out and feeling at one with the world and hugging trees. And I have a wonderful friend who is a white witch, and she has no truck at all with any kind of masculine god. And her spirituality and my spirituality are very closely linked. We may have different names for things, but well, as we talk, we realize that there's so much overlap in what we believe. But she goes out and she's at one with nature, and that connection with the universe is paramount to her. But for somebody who's into who needs some structure in their life, who functions with structure, that's not going to make any sense at all. In fact, it's going to be a little bit frightening. So going to a church where they know what's going to happen every day, every time they go, and there's certain routines to follow, certain prayers to say, that gives them something which they can feel secure in their lives. So you talked about, Erika, wanting to feel held, and that giving you that security. For other people, I think it may be different things, and this is why we have these various offshoots. For me, I want to be able to go, okay, that's your way of doing it, great. But even me saying that, I know that I will be rejected by people who say, no, that's not the right way. Okay, well, that's their problem, that's not my problem.
So what I'm getting, is that spirituality is whatever it means to you. It's an individual, personal kind of thing. I don't have to subscribe to I can sort of blend everything together if I need to, because going back to when you started about the stories in the church like that, I love the story of what we grew up to hearing in the Catholic Church, like those stories. And every Easter time, every Easter, around on Good Friday, Brett and I go to a live performance of the Stations of the Cross, and it's an annual thing. Like now it's part of it's Good Friday, we're doing that. And I go for the story. Like, it's just the story of it. And I put myself in the shoes of one of whoever was participating in that story. And I watched through the lens of, what if I was so-and-so when this was happening? What would I do? How would I feel? And I'm very moved by it every year. And it's a different feeling for me. So I have that part, right? All the stories, the saints, but I'm not subscribed to, all the rest of it as a way of having to be. So what I'm getting out of this conversation is that it's okay for me to take a little bit of all of everything that I've come across and find what works for me. And that is spirituality, because it's personal, like very much like grief is a personal journey. So spirituality is the same.
One of the oldest spiritual meditations is doing exactly what you've described. Is you read a story from a Christian perspective, a biblical story, and then you take the place of one of the characters. And so then you tell the story again with you in the story, and then see how that affects you. See what's going on there. What's going on physically, internally, emotionally. Maybe what would I say at that point? When Jesus says that to the person, what's my reaction?
That's really interesting, because Brett can vouch for this, that every time we go, more recently than not, I am 9 out of 10 times in the spot of Mary, because I'm a mother. So I am taking her spot, and I'm instantly enraged every year. I'm like, what? How is she not like running over and like not letting this happen? So I get very emotional about it. I just can't even. 9 out of 10. The other one, I'm wiping his face. Like, that's the role that I take. Those are the two spots that I take when I am in the presence of that story. So what you just said is, I'm going to take that in and take a look more at that. If you're telling me that is like an old spiritual practice to do that, who am I to argue with you, Gary? I mean, I believe you.
I mean, the other thing that there are people who say, you look at the Bible, Gary, it's brutal in places. Certainly the Hebrew scriptures, the Jewish scriptures, where people are torn limb from limb, and it appears that God is saying this. God is giving orders to go and wipe out whole towns or cities. So one of the things that the liberationist movement is doing within Christianity is going, okay, I'm reading the story. Where am I sitting in this? Where am I in the story? Am I the person saying, God has told me to kill you? Or am I one of the poor people who has nothing to do with the fighting? Now, where is God in this? Who wrote the story? And that changes then the perspective that you take. You think, maybe God didn't say. Maybe the person who won the war wrote the story. And maybe God is saying something different to me now. Maybe that wasn't God's way at all. And we can do this with any story, to be honest with you, in our lives. I mean, forget the Bible. We put ourselves in a place and go, okay, where is the... sorry, I've just lost my words for a moment. Who has got the power here? Who are the powerless? Who are the voiceless? And what does that mean? If God is a loving God, where now is God residing? And then this can help us to frame how we see the world. It all depends on lenses. So if you believe in a cruel God who does give orders to wipe people out, then guess what you're going to be? You're going to be a person who says it's okay to go and kill. Because at any stage, God could tell you to do that. If that's your lens. If your lens is through, for example, Jesus, who said, no, don't kill. That's not my way. In fact, I'm going to show you what it means not to fight back, then that changes how you see the world and how you act in the world. I think it has to.
It's really interesting. Thank you, Gary. So I'm just going to go around the room and see if anybody here has something that they want to add to this discussion or take away from the discussion, and wrap up our talk here. It's probably part one of our talk. I'm sure we're going to revisit with you because we can talk, for quite a while about this topic. So anybody want to jump in, have anything that you'd like to take away or add to this conversation before we wrap up for today?
I think Gary said right at the outset that it depends on where we meet one another. And he brought us back to that subject when he referenced his friend, the White Witch. And he's just done it again in that final section. We can believe in something that gives us authority to go and act in what could be a morally reprehensible way, or we can go out and accept that everything is part of all that is. And if we see somebody else, and you take a couple of the war zones that are going on in the world at the moment, and you forget about the politicians and what the mechanics of that is behind it. But if the people on both sides of that saw the others as just an extension of themselves, all going through the same suffering, all experiencing the same issues, lack of resources, fear, everything that goes with it, it would make for a much more peaceful way to go about being. And it's that links us to modern applied psychology. It's the seeking to understand the others and recognizing that there is a commonality. Mm-hmm. So whilst we're talking spirituality here, we could also be speaking commonality of purpose. And that's what I'm taking from this.
Thank you, Alex. Julian, Brett, anything?
Well, it's kind of a rabbit hole, isn't it? I mean, you can talk about it for not for hours, but maybe like for days or weeks. I think it's a pretty interesting topic, and I'm looking forward to listen for the part 2.
Yeah, we'll have to see where that winds us up. But thanks, Julian. Brett?
Yeah, I'm just very open to listening and looking to understand, and the different views. It's pretty cool. Like where are you? Are you the one that's taking the peaceful way? Are you the one that's driving forward and I'm being told to do this? So there's that perspective, and putting yourself in the place of each person of the story at different times is really a good concept that I haven't thought of. Like shifting the different, I just look at it as the story, but putting myself in the story as that person. What would I have done? And how would that feel? Would I have done that or not? So it's really, there's a lot here. Definitely looking to part 2 for sure. From my own knowledge and selfishly.
Yeah. Thanks, Brett. Yeah, Gary, this was for days. I could talk with you, listen to you for days about this. And I feel so fortunate that I can do that. Like at any time, I can actually just say, I need to sit and talk about this and work it out. But what I got is really personal, and there's no right or wrong. It's what's right for me and what helps me to live the kind of life that I want to live. So if I want to go to church and talk to St. Michael, I can do that. If I want to sit amongst the trees and talk to St. Michael, I can also do that. If I want to sit in my backyard and just talk to myself, I can also do that. So any and all three of those can be spirituality is what I'm getting. It's personal. So thank you for your time today. This is awesome. Yeah, I'm hoping that we can get you and do part 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe a little, I don't know, whatever. So stay tuned for that, people. We hopefully will be back with Mr. Gary Kennedy. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you
See you
so
next
much for
time.
inviting me. It's been a pleasure.
Wait, I wanted one more thing. You did mention, did you have a book that was an Advent something or other? And I just totally mumbled that all together. So I'll just allow you to tell us quickly what that is.
For the last 3 years, I've been writing Advent Reflections. So this is my third Advent reflection book. It's part of a series which I call Digging Deeper. So I pick a passage based on the lectionary. I give a short reflection, and then there are 5 reflective questions, self-reflective questions at the end of each one.
And how do people get that book? And by people, I mean me. So how does everybody get that book?
It will be on buymeacoffee.com through my name. It's not yet there, but it will be very soon.
Awesome. Thank you for that. We'll look forward to that coming out.
Thank
All
you.
right, thanks, guys.
Link in the comments when we upload this.
Awesome. Thanks, Alec. All right. Bye, everyone.